Well, hello and welcome to Museum Nights. It is wonderful to have you here joining me for the Harn Museum's Museum Nights Florida Framed. Why Florida Framed? We're taking inspiration tonight from an exhibition of art, a new part of our collection, a gift from Samuel H. and Roberta or Robbie T. Vickers. It's an exhibition called Florida Legacy, exhibiting these new works, and we're celebrating Florida in the frame, in paintings and in poetry and in photography and in the experience of nature. So we're going to be joined by a lot of guests. I want to welcome you and let you know it's such a pleasure to have you join us for our penultimate, our next to last online museum night before we go back in person in August. I'm joining you from my home tonight in Gainesville, Florida, and I want to acknowledge that this is the ancestral lands or the ancestral homelands of and territories of the Patano and Temecula peoples, as well as other indigenous communities who continue and have inhabited and stewarded this land. This evening's Museum Nights, as I say, celebrates Florida Legacy, the gift of Sam and Robbie T. Vickers, an exhibition that's currently on view, about 160 paintings of Florida, and you can see it at the Harn in person through August 1st. We are open Tuesday through Sunday, 6 days a week. The museum is free. We'd love for you to stop by. Weekend has free parking as well. When the exhibition closes on August 1st, we're going to hold our breath until September 21st when a smaller installation of the works or reinstallation of the works opens as Florida Impressions. So come see the exhibition before August 1st or again after September 21st. I am Eric Siegel. I think I've said that. I'm Director of Education at the Harn, but I'm going to be joined by Harn curator Dulce Roman, Harn former intern Leah Harrell, 4 students who have been writing about artworks on view in the museum in poetry and in prose. We'll be joined by Hilary Van Dyke from Outdoor Afro, thinking about getting out into nature, and also by Chrissy Martinez, a nature photographer whose work is quite extraordinary. And I'll also be joined by my colleague Paige Willis, who will have be in conversation with Chrissy. So a lot going on tonight. Some of it's pre-recorded, some of it's live. We, of course, can't be in the museum in the evening right now. We soon will be. So I'm going to start by sharing with you the first 2 short poems from Words on Canvas. It's an annual spring writing competition we run at the Harn Museum. Includes UF and Santa Fe College students. And we always get, this year we had almost 100 submissions, and these are just 2 of the fabulous participants. I'll share 2 more later on in the program. It's going to take me just a moment to share my screen. And sorry, sometimes you think you know exactly what you're doing in Zoom, and then you discover there's a little secret. Alrighty. I think that's looking good. And I'm sorry, I better make sure I've clicked all the buttons that help us to ensure that audio is going to come through. Okay, enjoy this.
Hi everyone, I'm William Carpenter. I'm a first-year MFA student in poetry here at UF, and this is my piece for Words on Canvas. I'd also like to say real quick, thank you to all of you at the Harn for putting this on. I think this is a lovely series. My artwork is in reference to Rihanna Matar's Jen and Robbie, Cambridge, Massachusetts, 2020, seen here. It's called 3 Frames. 3 frames. One child girds the window, sitting guard before her background of cluttered shadows, with crossed arms and feline sleep. She'd come to steal a look of the leads people used to follow their dogs and the sirens people used to trace trouble. But tired from stealing, she gave countenance and limp knuckles to passers-by and a sill, then the trespass of a camera and was captured in a still. The other fancies himself centered by the aperture. He shapes his face with his hands as if he is a mirror where reflections accrue like coats of paint. Above him, a snippet of tree and double-paned sky. Behind him, a fold of theater-thick curtain revealing little. Both are here in a sense because of the wall, which is thicker than both their necks. They are siblings, neighbors, roommates, or strangers. Do they talk? Have they ever decided not to talk to one another? Tangled the other's fingers in theirs? Of course not. Ripped from Cambridge, they cohabit, a portrait posing headlong into my gaze. Both are comfortable losing, perhaps for the first time, their claims to a curl of lip, a pull of cheek. Thank you.
That was William Carpenter's Three Frames. I'm going to share now Walker Wiggins, who wrote a piece called The Mechanic.
Hello, I'm Walker Wiggins, and I am a current dental student here at University of Florida, and I submitted The Mechanic for Words on Canvas poetry contest. To be perfect, it is mandated. Shine in the light. Reflect what they want to see. Don't worry, you can still be free. We must bend, but not break. To be polished is required. Smooth the surfaces. Display what is expected. Don't worry, you will be respected. We must bend, but not break. To be pristine is a necessity. Contain the darkness. Exhibit everything that is ideal. Don't worry, you can express how you feel. We must bend, but not break. To be well-rounded, but wait. It is time to acknowledge the fractures. We cannot be fixed if not broken. When can something round bend but not break? Splits propagate into the individual. True skills rise under pressure. Realize a crack is in your nature. Callous hands show his labor. It is human to be shattered. Your fissures show your journey. Yet, don't worry. We must break to mend. Thank you.
Alrighty, wonderful. And each of the Words on Canvas winners who are reading tonight, you're seeing them in the frame with the work that inspired the poetry or story they've written. And Walker Wiggins is there next to two Small Moons. Small Moon is the title of each of them, by Toshika Takaizu, and that's the inspiration for his The Mechanic. Let's see, a little note about trying to improve the volume. We'll work on that. In the meantime, now I want to take you into A Florida Legacy, the exhibition that inspired this evening, with an introduction to the exhibition and a conversation between a curator, Dulce Roman, and one of her interns, Leah Harrell, about working on and studying and discovering that exhibition. So this again is another pre-recorded a bit of content. Then we're going to be switching to live content shortly. Let me set that up and make sure we're sharing the screen again.
Hi, I'm Dulce Roman. I'm Chief Curator and Curator of Modern Art here at the Harn Museum. And I'm going to share with you some background on one of our newest exhibitions called A Florida Legacy, Gift of Samuel H. and Roberta T. Vickers. This is our first exhibition celebrating their landmark gift to the Harn Museum and to the University of Florida of more than 1,200 works of Florida-themed art representing more than 700 artists. The exhibition is a celebration of this gift. The Vickers have been collecting for about 40 years or more, And their goal in amassing this incredible collection was to create a visual record of all the artists who came to Florida and all of the special sites that inspired them. A Florida Legacy includes about 163 works from the collection. You'll see oil paintings, drawings, prints, and watercolors representing about 120 artists. And those works in the show date from the early 19th century to the mid-20th century. Most of these artists are American, but very few of them were actually from Florida. Most of them came here because they were either inspired by the weather in the winter or because they wanted to participate in one of the many artist communities that developed in cities, for example, in Palm Beach or in St. Augustine and also in Maitland. And others decided to actually move here after they spent time and decided that Florida was going to be their new home. The exhibition includes masterpieces by many famous artists in American art, and just to name a few, Martin Johnson Heade, Winslow Homer, Thomas Moran, John Singer Sargent. But there are also compelling works by many lesser-known artists, for example, Laura Woodward and Albert Backus, and the highwayman painter Harold Newton. The exhibition is organized along 6 themes, and those themes reflect many of the themes that are prominent in the Vickers collection as a whole. So you begin the exhibition with a section called Florida Nature, and here you'll find incredible landscapes of Florida beaches and wetlands and forests, and truly many incredible, incredible landscapes. The next section is called Florida History, and that includes drawings of important figures in Florida history. There's also an early map of Florida, and there are depictions of historic sites, for example, in St. Augustine. The section on Florida landmarks includes views of historic forts, town squares, and city parks in many different cities across the state. The Florida Diversions section shows a lot of what Florida has to offer, a lot of fun activities and popular tourist attractions, for example, beaches, the racetrack, golf courses, and the Florida Springs. There's also a section called Florida Impressions, and that section includes a lot of lively sketches. Many of them were created on the spot, watercolors and drawings, and they represent the artist's very personal experience and response to their Florida subject. And then we end the exhibition with a section called Florida Living. And that focuses on Florida in a more general sense, all that Florida has to offer. It overlaps with some of the other sections in the exhibition and includes scenes of daily life in Florida. Sam and Robbie Vickers chose the Harn Museum and the University of Florida for this incredible gift because they wanted to share it. They wanted to share it with students and faculty and scholars of Florida art, but they also wanted to share it with our local community and with visitors to the state of Florida. There's so much to discover here, so much to enjoy in the exhibition. It's on view through August 1st, and we hope to see you here.
Last spring semester, Leah Harrell worked with me as a curatorial intern, and she researched several of the artists in the exhibition. She just completed her junior year at the University of Florida, where she's a double major in art history and anthropology. Leah, can you talk a bit about your internship and some of the interesting things that you learned as part of your experience working on the Florida Art Collection?
Yes, of course. So as you mentioned, I was the curatorial intern in the modern department this past spring. So I worked very closely with Dulcie this whole past semester, which was a great experience to learn more about the field I wish to pursue in graduate school and my future career, and more specifically learn about the roles and responsibilities of a curator. So it was a lot of fun being able to not only learn about these roles and responsibilities, but being able to partake in some of them, as I spent time working on an future exhibition design with Dulcie, which was not only a great opportunity to gain experience in a specific role of a curator, but it was also a lot of fun to have those conversations with you about the merits of hanging certain paintings and the potentials of certain groupings within a gallery and the overall impression we wanted it to have for the future visitors. So that was a lot of fun. Something else interesting about my internship was just being able to have the opportunity to work so closely with the Vickers collection throughout all aspects of the internship. So I was able to really gain a deeper connection to a lot of the artists within the collection, as well as different paintings that are featured in A Florida Legacy. Mm-hmm. Specifically, I spend time researching female artists that are highlighted in A Florida Legacy and are from the Vickers collection. So I researched artists such as Marguerite Zurak, Jane Peterson, and Laura Woodward during my internship.
Thanks for sharing insights about your internship experience. I'm curious to hear if you could talk a little bit about one or two of the artists in the exhibition who intrigued you the most.
Yes, of course. So the artist I was initially drawn to was Laura Woodward. I was very drawn to her style, and researching her, I then found her story very interesting as well. So Woodward began to spend her summers in St. Augustine in Florida in search of this type of tropical foliage that she really wished to depict within her paintings. And sadly, she did not find this type of scenery in St. Augustine, but when she was there, she befriended Henry Flagler, as she was both living and working out of his hotel. She then began to travel to more areas of Florida, such as Palm Beach. And it was Palm Beach where she finally found this tropical fauna and flora that she had dreamed of painting. Mm-hmm. So she brought back all of these very naturalistic, beautiful depictions of the area and showed them to Henry Flagler, and also spoke to him about the potential of Palm Beach. So there's a number of sources that actually credit Woodward with inspiring Flagler to build his hotel in Palm Beach, which would thus spur the development and tourism of this area. So I thought that was a very interesting story, as it not only gives an insight into like her artistic styles and development over her lifetime, but also the impact she ended up having on the state. And another artist I researched was Theresa Bernstein. And Theresa Bernstein was born in 1890 in Krakow in Poland. And after immigrating to the United States with her parents, she lived until 2002. So she ended up passing away just 2 weeks before her 112th birthday. So this led to an artistic career that lasted for 90 years. So during her career, she witnessed a multitude of historic events, as well as the rise and fall of numerous artistic styles. So just that length of time and witnessing all those events was very surreal to think about. But she managed to keep a very consistent style throughout the majority of her career. And some of her favorite subjects included capturing the everyday life and the urban realities in New York City, as well as the experiences of women within these scenes. She also was really attracted to the energy of group scenes, such as parades and concerts, as well as beach scenes. Though she never focused on the actual landscapes, the scenery of beaches, she focused more on the energy and dynamics of the different people on the shore. And it was also interesting to learn about that she did receive critical acclaim during her career in the beginning of the 1920s. However, by the end of that decade, her popularity as well as reputation had declined considerably. And this was due to two reasons. One, she focused more on promoting her husband's career, William Meyerowitz, at the time. And during this time, abstract expressionism had really taken off. And besides a few experimental works, she never really veered toward abstraction. She focused more on realism within her works because she wanted to depict the realistic realities of urban life in New York City. So her career, she continued to paint and be a painter throughout her life, but sadly, she never received the same amount of acclaim that she did at the very beginning of her career. And her painting, Water Tower Town, is included in a Florida Legacy. And back to Woodward. Woodward has 3 paintings that are included in a Florida Legacy, such as Swamp Landscape, which is my favorite from this exhibition due to like her subtle brushstroke as well as the simple beauty of the swamp, as it reminds me of Gainesville a lot and Payne's Prairie and everything. So that work is my favorite from this exhibition. Dulcie, did you have a favorite work of art from this exhibition?
I have a lot of favorites. It's hard to pick just one, but responding to your comment on how you were drawn to the swamp landscape and how it reminds you of Payne's Prairie and the area surrounding Gainesville, if I had to pick one to talk about, I would say that Herman Herzog's Lake Alachua is one of my favorites. And that's because it also depicts an area that's nearby. It depicts Payne's Prairie, which is just south of Gainesville, between Gainesville and Micanopy. So for people who may not know where it is, it's a place that a lot of people in our area visit for recreation, and it's just a beautiful place. Today, it's actually a state park. And Herzog was drawn to that area when he would travel from his home in Philadelphia to this area because his son taught chemistry at Florida Agricultural College, which was in Lake City. So he would make these trips, and while he was here, he would hike from coast to coast, so from the Atlantic to the Gulf, and he would travel down to South Florida, and he would bring small canvases with him that he would sketch. And when he returned to Philadelphia after these travels, he would use those small paintings and small sketches as inspiration for making larger full-scale oil paintings like Lake Alachua, the one that we have in the Vickers collection. One thing that compels me about that painting is how he captured the very subtle qualities of light and water. It has dramatic cloud formations, and you see the sun piercing through there. It's very dramatic. And the brilliant light that's reflected on the water surface is also just really beautiful and contemplative. The painting gets its name. I mean, we don't today know about a Lake Alachua, but at the time in the late 19th century, there was actually a lake that had formed in the prairie when a lot of heavy rain caused it to flood. And there was a sinkhole that years later became opened up again. And that water level that had formed that lake drained out in a period of about 10 days. It dropped 8 feet and was no longer a lake. So the painting is an interesting record of something we don't see anymore today. I mean, occasionally we do see the water level rise and we have some flooding, but it doesn't quite look like a lake like it did when Herzog painted it. And that's one of the elements that makes the Florida Vickers collection so unique and important, is that a lot of the paintings, like Herzog's Lake Alachua, they represent areas that have either changed dramatically because of forces of nature, like this sinkhole becoming unplugged, or even our impact on the environment and development. So this is one of those paintings that I think is an important record of our area and tells sort of a history that we don't all know about if not for that painting. So, the exhibition closes soon, August 1st. And so one of the things I think we wanted to share with people today was what's next after this exhibition closes. And this is something that you helped me think about and work on. You and I worked together on a smaller version of this exhibition that would open in another gallery called Bishop Gallery. And that show is going to be called Florida Impressions. And it's going to open on September 21st. And it'll have a lot of the same themes that we see in the current show, A Florida Legacy. But instead of having 163 works, the new smaller show will have about 50 paintings. And you'll see a lot of the same themes that are in the big show, like landscapes and historical landmarks and popular tourist attractions here in our area and in the state. So our goal is to always have a presence for this collection, to always have a presence in the galleries, but we can change out the space around different themes over time. We're also working on a plan to continue working with students through internships and research projects. And you were one of our very first interns working on the collection. And I really want to thank you for joining me tonight and for contributing to our research on the collection this semester. And it was just a real pleasure working with you, Leah, this past semester. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much. I had a fantastic time and it was a great opportunity. And I'm very happy to be included within this conversation and this museum nights as well. So thank you.
Thank you.
That was a great introduction to the exhibition. Thank you, Dulcie and Leah. And so wonderful to hear about some of your favorites and also to hear about Leah's work supporting the development of the exhibition and Dulcie's work supporting Leah's academic and career goals. We love working with students at the university in a whole range of capacities from all majors and backgrounds. I'm going to now ask Hilary Van Dyke to join me. Here we go. Hilary's coming in. Hilary, we want to speak with Hilary tonight. Hey, great to see you.
How are you?
I'm doing great, thank you. We want to speak with Hilary tonight because we've been talking about looking at art and images of nature by artists who are going out into nature. So we also want to think about the experience of going into nature, which is something that Hilary is passionate about as a volunteer leader for Outdoor Afro, a volunteer network that's nationwide. You are with the St. Pete, Tampa, Orlando network, and I'm looking forward to learning about your experiences and passions for nature and about the Outdoor Afro network. And we'll look at a couple of images if we have a chance. I know you haven't gotten to visit the museum yet. We're going to get you up here soon, but you got to see some of the paintings that we do have on view. But I thought if I could just begin by asking you how you got interested and began to experience nature. Some of us, that happens when we're kids with our families or scouts or something. For others, it happens later in life. Hilary, can you tell us a little bit about how you came to sort of flex your passion for nature?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you for having me. I appreciate that. I really like this question, mainly because I don't feel like I ever really thought about this question until my first year actually as Outdoor Afro leader. We have to do, we attend the Outdoor Afro leadership training for the leaders, and the CEO and founder, Rue Mapp, had talked to us about really thinking about just the ways that people can experience the outdoors. And even if you are someone who, let's say, plays basketball, but you played outside every day, or playing tennis, and just all these different ways that we're outside all the time, but don't really think of it as being outdoorsy, because we imagine that you have to be hiking or biking or kayaking or whatever. And so that really got me thinking about the fact that, like, you know, my mom is an avid gardener, like just huge flower garden all over the house. Like the backyard looks like Fern Gully. My dad has he's always had a vegetable garden, but his like one time in middle school, one summer, he did too well. Like the green beans, the cherry tomatoes, all the squashes were just growing far too well. And so we had to keep bringing them to the neighbors. And we did a lot of camping. And so I feel like it really was only just a few years ago that I was like, oh yeah, I mean, of course I like nature, because we were outside all the time. And then just as a kid, always on my bike, always outside. So I think I can blame my parents. And even actually in May, I got to see them for the first time in a while because of all the madness. And I was just sitting in their house looking around, and there's, like, you know, plants all over the house. And then Dad still has the vegetable garden, and I'm thinking back to my house with his plants all over the place and got my vegetable garden. So I think it's probably their fault.
Cool. Well, I love that idea of sort of a continuum of experiencing nature, but also the idea of the outdoors as a broader way of framing it, and maybe creating more of a way in. You don't have to be a nature person, but you can start as an outdoor person and continue along that process. How outdoorsy?
Can I ask you how you came to like the outdoors?
Do I like the outdoors? That's the first question.
Oh yeah, do you like the outdoors?
Look at my screensaver. I'm outside. Yes. So I did a little camping with my family when I was a kid. Not a lot, but we were in California, and California is a different nature than Florida. Mm-hmm. California is this kinder, gentler nature. So I'm still learning to figure out how you cohabit with mosquitoes in Florida. So I'm a seasonal nature lover. Like in the spring, when the mosquitoes are maybe in abatement a bit. But you know, surfing, no mosquitoes there. I love surfing, or have loved for a long time. So again, that's kind of a continuum of activities as well. So what kind of so I don't know if you're gardening now or playing basketball. What kind of outdoors activities are you pursuing with Outdoor Afro? And maybe you can tell us a little bit about how you got involved with Outdoor Afro.
The main thing I do is hiking events, but we've also done fishing events, kayaking, biking, camping, snorkeling. We've done like a edible plant class at REI, all sorts of events. And then my preferred event is hiking. I also have my little vegetable garden where I get like one pepper and one tomato. All the effort for almost nothing. And then I also like cycling a lot. And whenever I can travel to go hike on a mountain, that's the sweet spot.
That's lovely. Mountains. Okay, that requires getting out of Florida a little bit.
Yes.
So Outdoor Afro sounds so fascinating to me. One of the slogans that you see on the website is where Outdoor Afro is where Black people and nature meet. Can you tell us a little bit more about why that network is important to connect Black people to the outdoors?
Mm-hmm. Well, one question I don't think I answered was the way that I found Outdoor Afro was I think in 2015 someone had sent me an article from NPR of Rue being interviewed, and I was just like, okay, what is this? I need to be a part of this right now. And I found the email because at the time there weren't any Florida networks, and so they weren't quite looking for new volunteer leaders yet. But then when it was like that season to start adding new leaders, the recruiter actually reached back out to me. Because at the time she had told me to check back around whatever month it was, but then whenever it was that month, she actually emailed me the application. And now I'm in my 6th year as a volunteer leader. I think I can speak to why it's important just for how it's like changed my life. I think the first thing, just this network of people that I've come to know, just like great friends that feel like family. And then also having those people with you and by your side when you're out doing the things help you feel more comfortable in those spaces, but then I think also help you feel more confident in those spaces, especially if they maybe know how to do the thing and they're teaching you that. And then a big thing for me is disrupting the idea that we're not outside when I think that narrative is false, and that we are outdoors. And so that's one of the biggest things, is just the many Black folks that I've gotten to recreate with outside. And then even in my own network, the way that them being a part of Outdoor Afro has expanded their interest in moving beyond just the hikes and doing the camping and things. And camping in Florida is the situation, especially in the summer. But just that people are out there doing that, buying tents, going out on their own, like not necessarily needing us anymore to do those things. So yeah, I think just the way that it connects you to other humans that look like you, who have interest in being outside. And then I just think about my own like mental health and the benefits of being out in nature, and how I can't like even begin to explain the way that it just calms me down and helps me feel better. And so I think that's important too for anybody of any race.
Absolutely, real wellness experiences in nature. We actually promote the museum as a place for other kinds of air-conditioned wellness experience where you can really decompress as well. But I really appreciate your sharing the idea of Outdoor Afro as both being a promoter of community, but also a catalyst towards individual achievement and discovery,
right.
And learning how to engage the outdoors. That's great. Outdoor Afro promotes on the website, they talk about connecting Black people to the outdoors. We were talking about a little bit, protecting the outdoors, thumbs up, and also reimagining Blackness in the outdoors. I wonder if you can unpack that for us a little bit, what it is to reimagine Blackness in the outdoors. Maybe we're touching on that a little bit when you're talking about people not thinking about Black people as being outdoorsy or in nature.
Yeah, I mean, I think just what you said, exactly that, that really dispelling that notion of like, I'm the number one person when my friends say, oh, that's white people stuff. And I'm like, I absolutely, what do I always say? I just forget the phrase that I use. I always say, I can't think of the phrase, but I always say, no, I don't like that notion. That's not true. Outdoors is for everyone. And so the conversation that I have with people is like, these are the benefits of being outside. That should be for everyone. Like everyone should get to experience that. And anyone that I've taken on the hike afterwards is like, you're right. And so I think that's the big thing, is just making sure that not only we recognize that we are allowed outside, and that not only are we allowed out there, we excel out there. Every national park I've been to, I see us out there as well. But then also just making sure that people who don't look like us are seeing us out there as well. So I just think it helps to remind people that we out here.
That's great. I should mention that anyone who has questions, they can pop them in the chat, and I'll try and turn my eyes on that as well. So if you're watching and you want to ask me or to pass a question on to Hillary, I'd be delighted to. I really appreciate your sharing your thinking about reimagining Blackness and making sure that everyone's imagination of nature and experiencing the outdoors includes Black people, brown people, all peoples. It's a space that can get papered over with whiteness in one's imagination if you're not challenging a lot of the common media presentations we see. advertisements, whatever. I was reading Carolyn Finley's Black Faces, White Spaces. I don't know if that's a book that's interested you, talking about Black people engaging in the outdoors. Oops, we accidentally admitted a page. I'm going to send her off to the page. You're going to the waiting room. You're so impatient. How do I do that? Oh, she'll just, that's fine. We'll leave it there. Let's see. So I was going to ask you about, she was in her book, in Black Faces, White Spaces. Finley, amongst other things, talks a little bit about Mavini Betch, who worked to preserve American Beach on Amelia Island. And he talked both about the importance of its natural beauty, but also about how it embodies African-American history in the landscape and in the spaces, the outdoors. And I'm curious if you look for history as well in your nature experiences. Are you kind of thinking about that simultaneously? Is that an appeal for you?
I love this question. So one of the things that we have to do as part of the experience is tie the event to history.
Oh, cool.
And so first of all, I definitely did not like social studies as a student, absolutely hated it. And now I'm pursuing a doctorate in social sciences education. Cool. And it really is, a lot of it was the work that I was doing research to learn more about the land that I live on, just falling down these amazing rabbit holes and learning so much because I'm like learning about me and what people that look like me did on the land, and realizing that it isn't that social studies is boring. Maybe I just need to be a little more inclusive. So yes, definitely do a lot of research related to the history of the land. And the history of Black people on the land. Right now, one of the rabbit holes that I'm super in, let me see if I can get this thing. So we have in this area, Tarpon Springs, which is North County, Pinellas, is famous for the sponge docks. And it's famous for the sponge docks.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and like the history all about it is about like the Greek people and the sponge docks, and all, when you go there, all the pictures, all the statues, everything you see is just, white dudes in the scuba suits and the Greek people. And while researching for an event, I stumbled upon a piece of information that I was just like, what? But the sponging industry was actually like set up and really started by Bahamian sponge divers,
right,
who had started 30 years before the Greeks got here. And so the Greeks then came 30 years later, 1500 Greek people migrated here and then kind of slowly started taking over the industry. But now the just presence of any Black folks that were doing that work is gone. And so like, I've just been kind of finding some stuff. I don't know if you can see this. So I bought this little postcard on eBay. It's not necessarily from Tarpon Springs, but I'm just trying to learn more about what Bahamian sponge diving was like.
Divers.
Because I imagine that they would have come here and set up a similar situation. So even that their sponge diving is, everything I can find is free diving. So even just like, that's cool.
That is cool.
To being, and even I think about like Black students in Tarpon Springs, and if they had learned about the fact that there's this legacy of Black folks scuba diving, essentially, or free diving, would that have changed some of our statistics around like swimming and diving in that area? So
yeah,
super cool history. It's all over the place, and I love it.
It is, and that kind of citizen history and citizen teaching, right, spreading the word about things you're learning about, looks to me to be even more important in the coming years and decades as we see Florida schools potentially stepping back from teaching critical race theory, from teaching more and more, one imagines that's going to impact the teaching of diverse histories of Florida and the country. So thank you for doing that work and sharing what you're learning. That's so important. That's amazing.
Yeah, I'm a huge nerd for history.
Cool. I love that, it's not where you came from. You didn't love it when you were younger necessarily, but you found the passion and have built on it. So I think I mentioned before, you haven't had a chance to come to Gainesville. Please do come. I'd love to get together in person to look at the images. But you saw a couple of reproductions, and you mentioned there were a couple you liked that spoke to you in some way, but I didn't ask you how. So I'm going to just bring them up on the screen and see if I can share them. And maybe, obviously, you know, we don't expect you to be an art historian or an artist or a museum person, but I'm curious what caught your attention in these, if you don't mind sharing, or if you have thoughts you'd like to.
I'm definitely not going to sound like the two before us as far as why I'm attracted to these. But the one on the left, in general, first of all, both of these are sunset. The one on the right is a sunset picture, but this one on the left, I'm not sure if it's a sunset or sunrise, but I just really, really like sunsets and sunrises, specifically because of what happens with the sky. And then the other thing that's always interesting here, because this one looks like it's like a storm sky that the sunset or sunrise is happening during. And even though some of the storms that happen here are wildly annoying, I just absolutely love what happens to the clouds when storms are happening. And if you look in this image on the left, just the way these clouds look on the right, I love that so much up here. Yeah, all of that. I have so many pictures like that in my phone of just looking at how the clouds do the super white clouds against all these like really interesting colors in our Florida skies. And then how it'll be 9 p.m. and it's supposed to be super dark, and sometimes you'll still look up and see clouds like that. And then on the right, that one, there's a preserve in St. Pete called Boyd Hill Nature Park. And I think that's probably the place that I've hiked the most out of any place if I don't feel like getting up and driving to Hillsborough to find a trail. And this picture just really reminds me of one of the paths that I go down in Boyd Hill. So I was just really struck by them. So yeah, these two were of the ones I really like.
Thank you. I really appreciate your seeing yourself in this painting and inserting yourself into it. Most of the images in this collection don't depict African Americans. There are some that do, and they're quite wonderful. But you're finding your place and sharing your place in this image on the right, which is Herzog, the same artist that Dulcie said was her favorite, but a different painting by him. I love knowing that you experience this landscape as well. And as far as talking art history, you did a great job. I love that you brought out the drama and the drama of weather and of the time of day. That's classic art history talk. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
I'm just
so I think even if I'm like not in the painting, like I still think that because it's nature, there's still that way that like we can all still connect to the paintings. Is this one your favorite?
I picked this one. It's a watercolor. It's this big. It's a pretty sizable watercolor, but I've spent a bit of time looking at it. And if I do that, and then in a day or two, I see palm fronds, I see them differently. I love when an artwork transforms or makes me look closer at the world around me. So I found that this watercolor painting, which is really just some palm thicket, right? Very simple subject, but complicated arrangement to do in watercolor. Right. It changes my vision a little bit when I spend enough time looking at it. So we're going to look at it when you come to Gainesville, Hillary.
I like it. What you just said also kind of made me think about sometimes I feel like when I have moments where I am sitting, I don't know if I'm like hiking or something, where I'm like, I wonder if like an ancestor of mine has had a situation like this. You know what I mean? Where I just, maybe not, but I'll have those moments a lot of the time where I am just wondering if I'm experiencing a thing that like one of my ancestors from Haiti has experienced, because I know that ancestrally we were nature people. And so I just think about that a lot, but how like I randomly will just look at nature a little differently. But maybe that's just me.
No, but I'm not fixated on mosquitoes. But yeah, when I'm out in nature, and you're thinking they didn't even have screens on their windows,
Right.
right?
Yes.
Just the kind of like ability to tolerate the flies and the mosquitoes and the heat. No AC, of course. You have to
Definitely.
honor the strength of ancestors who came to Florida when it looked very different from what it looks like today.
Very true.
But it's good to challenge ourselves to get out there as well. It's such a fun time to talk with you, Hillary. I'm so glad that you accepted my invitation to join us. I look forward to so much to show you here. Just next to the Harn is a place, it's not very big, but it's the Natural Area Teaching Lab. And it's an outdoors area that tries to maintain a natural Florida environment. So it's really cool to explore, again, nature and culture, paintings, and then out in the nature. So lots of good connections. Thank you, Hillary. It's been a real pleasure chatting with you, and I wish you well, and enjoy the coming hot summer.
I will, and you need to as well.
Okay, we'll do. I'll push myself to that.
Don't worry about the mosquitoes.
Okay, I'll be brave.
All right.
Thank
Have
you.
a good one.
Bye-bye, Hillary.
Bye.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and bring in Paige. Maybe I lost Paige. Paige, are you here? And then Chrissy as well. Oops. Sorry. Just getting Paige in now. There we go. I had a couple of things to set up. So, Chrissy, so great to see you. I got to chat with you the other day, but I'm going to step back. And if you are all set up, everyone, I'm going to let Paige take over the hosting duties.
Hi everyone, happy museum nights. My name is Paige and I'm a museum educator at the Harn Museum of Art, and I'm pleased to introduce you to Chrissy Martinez, who is an adventurous and curious nature photographer who captures magical moments in the Florida landscape. So Chrissy is here with us live tonight to talk about her practice as a Florida-based photographer and to share some of her favorite experiences in the field. After her presentation, I'll be joining Chrissy to ask a few questions about her approach to outdoor photography. So feel free to submit your own questions in the chat box and I'll relay them to her. Ready, Chrissy? I think you're on mute. I think you quickly unmuted and then muted yourself again.
How about now?
There we go. We can hear you.
Okay, perfect. Let's see. It's not allowing me to do a screen share. When I click on the green button, it says host disabled participant screen share.
That's fixed now. My bad.
Oh, okay, no worries. All right, here we go. 1 sec.
Chrissy, should this have audio playing?
Yes. Yes, it should have.
We don't hear the audio. Did you click that little checkbox when you shared screen?
Let me check that.
Yeah, just go ahead and stop screen share and then reshare.
Okay.
And watch for the little checkbox at the bottom of the...
Stop share. Okay. So screen share. Oh, share sound. No, I didn't click that button. Thank you.
Thank you.
So helpful. All right. Here we go. Let me know if it works this time. I just saw a weird message. Okay.
Yeah, it did not go quite correctly, so
hopefully this will do it.
It's looking good. Hit play, and yeah, looks good.
Okay. Okay. Am I unmuted now? I think I'm good. Yeah.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. So let's go back a second here. All right, so I'm excited to share some of my favorite images and stories about photographing wildlife and landscapes in Florida. So here's a photo of me with my favorite little Manchichi. I was one of the quietest kids at my school, but loved reading zoo books and anything about animals. My dream at the time was to have a real pet monkey, but I'm thankful that my parents never got me one. My dog Max ended up being one of my best friends, and we got to explore wildlife with him. He was a beautiful and fearless dog. One day when we were pulling onto the driveway off of our limestone road in Hawthorne, we were stopped and couldn't go any farther because there was an 8-foot rattlesnake lying across our driveway with a bunny rabbit in its mouth. Growing up in the country, there was always some kind of adventure. While I've always had an adventurous side, for the longest time, I was afraid of the dark, of snakes and alligators. At one point, I was even afraid to go to the Lachua Trail with less than 3 people. My fear came from a place of not knowing. When I made this choice to start sleeping outside, I started to realize that my curiosity had become much stronger than my fear. This is a silhouette photo of a great blue heron at Paynes Prairie Observatory off of 441. I love photographing when the lighting is good around sunrise or sunset. It usually feels a lot better outside at that time too. There's also usually a lot of wildlife activity during these times. This is a wild horse on the side of 441 at sunset, taken on my way home from yoga. I photographed this when the prairie flooded over after Hurricane Irma. I would pull over nearly every day on my way home from work because there was always something curious like this happening that I'd never seen, and the prairie started to look different to me every day. I had already taken some photos during the best light of the day and had been up since 5:30 a.m. I was feeling tired and heading home, but had a random thought to pull into Sweetwater wetlands for like just 30 minutes. When I got there, I was told that there were baby alligators hatching and their mom was digging them out of the nest. My 30 minutes quickly turned into 5 hours. I decided it was time to go when the swamp water started making me thirsty and the grass was looking like a great place to take a nap. Here's a photo of another little baby alligator. So every moonrise is always different. This photo merges 2 of my favorite things, a full moon covered in clouds that look like an alligator. I woke up in my tent while it was still dark out, and the temperature was in the high 20s to head down to the prairie to photograph the super blood moon lunar eclipse. This photo is important to me because my friend Maura, who recently passed, took this photo of me. It is also one of the few photos that I have with my bike before it got totaled in an accident. This is the photo of the lunar eclipse that I was photographing in the previous photo. Just got myself mixed up for a second here. Hold on. Oh, yeah. Okay, I'm back. Sorry about that. So I was meeting someone at the Springs for an early morning photo shoot and rode my motorcycle in the 30-degree weather back when I had just had a half helmet and the kind of gloves that didn't really keep my hands warm and would turn my fingers into crinkle cut fries. I took this photo while my hands were still thawing out and the sun was starting to come up. When I got there and got to witness this incredible moment, it made it all worth it. I was in a very serious motorcycle accident 8 minutes after taking this photo. This is a sunrise that I will never forget. I've been gifted the opportunity of more time here, but I've also been healing from a traumatic brain injury ever since. This was taken on my first time driving after the accident and using my underwater housing for the first time. It felt important to me to return to Ginny Springs for my own healing and to document the springs that are facing extraction of 1.2 million gallons of water a day by Nestle. And this is one of my first split images taken on the spring run on the same day. Looking into the crystal clear water, it is stunningly some of the most beautiful water in the world, but also looks quite vacant compared to the same spring that I swam in as a kid. And here's a split image of cypress knees coming up out of the water. And here's a photo of what can happen to springs as we extract more and more water and overuse fertilizers. Unhealthy algae emerges from too many nitrates. And as you can see, this doesn't look edible and there are not too many fish hanging out. If you want to learn more about how to protect our springs, you can follow the Florida Springs Institute and the Florida Springs Council. Our springs and waters all across the state of Florida need your support and help more now than ever. This photo was taken at Post Springs just a few months ago. I took a few clear photos of this heron with nothing in front of it. It was just kind of a boring photo. So I decided to move over to the right a little bit and started to frame its face with the grass that was being lit by the sun. I love moving around and changing angles and looking for natural frames in nature. This alligator emerged up from the water just after the sun went down, trying to chomp on this fish. If you look closely, you can see the fish hidden in its swamp salad. Because it was getting dark, I had to photograph this on a very high ISO so that I could increase the speed that I was photographing it at to be able to capture its like quick and erratic movements. I rode my bike down to the Lechua Trail and got to witness this sandhill crane walk right up to a woman that I hadn't met yet, who was sitting on the ground in front of me. We exchanged smiles of amazement. A few minutes later, it marched right up to my camera and I took these while it was advancing towards me. I like to call this photo the Mother's Day Eagle. I was riding into Gainesville with my sister and she was having a very difficult start to her Mother's Day when she looked over and spotted this eagle in the median on our way into town. We turned around to see if it was still there and got incredibly lucky. I took a few photos of it in the median for a few minutes before it took off, and it left us both with a feeling of hope. Here's a snail kite at the Lechua Trail that just landed on this little perch. And here's an osprey, also known as a fishhawk, which is my favorite name for this bird, at the Lechua Trail that, oh, oops, I just hopped around. Yeah. Oh yeah, sorry, so here's my place. When photographing birds in flight, I like to set my camera speeds to at least 0.002 of a second. Here's a full moon rising up over Payne's Prairie, taken during a time when I was going to yoga every day. Doing yoga, qigong, and Wim Hof breath have helped me to connect more deeply to myself and to wildlife and nature and play a huge foundation in how I approach my wildlife photography. Here's a full moon over wild horses. I like to get to my locations early and see what wildlife I can line up with my moon photos long before the moon comes up. On this particular day, I was planning to photograph the moon with the dead trees. And when I saw these horses, I knew I would start with them first. However, sometimes the moon is a prankster and decided to hide behind the clouds. So I didn't get the exact photo that I wanted, but I'm still pretty happy with this one. This is a photo of the same full moon, and I was on my bicycle, so I had to plan this all out very carefully. As soon as I got the horse with the moon photos, I jumped on my bicycle and pedaled as fast as I could to the dead trees to get this photo. And here is a yellow lotus emerging from the swampy prairie, and a barred owlet coming out of a hole in a tree. Some cormorants with the moon rising up behind them. The moon took its time arriving through the clouds again, and I only had a few moments to photograph this before the moon was up too high in the sky. This photo was taken like 15 minutes later and is on a long exposure. It's a long exposure of the moon with this super still alligator to the left. To get this photo, I had to have my camera on a stable surface. And at that moment, I couldn't find my tripod adapter. So I improvised and just propped it up on a hat and some other stuff. I would have preferred a little bit more foreground in this photo if I had had my tripod. But this is a reminder to just do the best with what you have on hand. I zoomed in close on this gator's eye with my 600mm lens. I saw a spot where I could have moved and gotten the eye at a much better angle, but something in me said, no, it's not safe. I would have been crouched down like at a little snackable size. It's crucial to listen to your intuition when you're out photographing wildlife. This was the first time I was able to watch an alligator watching its environment by zooming in on its eye. The way the sunset perfectly aligned and reflected the image of what it was looking at. Because I watched its eye for like 30 minutes, I noticed it would slightly move its head a little bit every time someone walked up. It looked like kind of excited. Then as the moon was coming up and the sky grew darker, a very tall man walked up to me and told me that he had been feeding him roadkill. At that moment, everything became clear. The alligator was likely getting excited every time someone was walking up because it was ready to eat. This is the perfect example of why it's not good to feed alligators. It's dangerous for people who come later, who don't know that the gator has now associated people with food. This has also taught me to look at most gators as if they've possibly been fed just to play it safe. One day I decided to put myself on assignment to photograph magical moments on the prairie. I got up while it was still dark out and packed everything I needed on my bicycle for the whole day. I was so excited. Why wait for someone else to ask me to do something that I love to do? I started photographing the moonset that morning and was hoping to see the bison because it had been years since I had seen them. I briefly saw the lone bison for a moment in the middle of the day before it walked off into the woods. Just as the sun was setting, I found myself back at the same spot that I was photographing the moonset. The lone bison started wandering towards my direction on the main trail. I love the way this bird looked at this bison. In my fantasy, they were best friends and went on adventures together every day on the prairie. A bison and its bird go on a walk together. At one point, the bison got tired of its bird friend picking on its back and asked it to move, and the only way that it knew how, by picking up a clump of grass and tossing it over its shoulder at the bird. If you're lucky enough to see them, please remember to give these wild creatures the space that they deserve. People often get so excited that they get way too close and fail to notice that they're giving body language that says like, back up, I'm just trying to eat, or something else. I recommend checking out Photographers Without Borders ethical wildlife photography tips to anyone who is into wildlife photography. My friend and mentor, Danny, is the founder of it. I noticed this anhinga hanging out by itself and throwing a stick in the air to itself over and over. At first I wondered, like, is this bird all right? And then I was convinced there was a reason. I later learned this was a juvenile practicing its fish catching skills with a stick. It's pretty cool. I always love researching stuff after I see interesting things out there. And here is an osprey making a funny face at me. Sometimes being out in nature can remind me not to take things so seriously and just to lighten up a little bit. Here's a raccoon in my backyard who just snuck into some cat food. A deer making some faces at me. And a sandhill crane family on the side of 441 doing a little stretch class together. I highly recommend if you ever see anything cool and you can safely pull over to take that time to do it if you have that time, because very likely you won't see the same thing again. This is one of my favorite photos that I've gotten to take. If you look closely, you can see a moonrise and a sunset in this gator's eyes. Even though I couldn't ask the gator to pose like this, well, I could ask, but like it probably wouldn't listen. I got this photo because I was tuned into the timing of the moonrise and the sunset and waited for that moment to happen. Here is a close-up of the same photo so that you can see the sun and the moon a little better. And here is one of my first photos of the comet. I was so excited to be able to photograph a comet last year. It was one of the best feelings in the world. So I went out at least 7 nights and a few mornings photographing the comet. I was kind of relieved when it left because I just couldn't stop taking pictures of it and I was getting really tired. And I photographed this particular one out at a lake outside of Hawthorne on a trip that I took with my parents. So I ended up paying off all of my debts and moving back indoors into my own place, but often tap back into those nights that I spent under the stars. This photo was taken after the comet moved below the horizon at Payne's Prairie. And I looked up behind me and it was dark enough to see the dust cloud of the Milky Way. So I ended my night here, taking a long exposure with my camera on a tripod before heading home at 12 a.m. on my bicycle. I'm reminded of the quote, "The darkest nights produce our brightest stars." I hope that no matter where you are, that the stars will bring you the same hope and joy that they bring to me. And I'm looking forward to seeing the magic that you create. Okay, stop share, right? Yeah. Whoa. The buttons.
Yeah, wow. Thank you. That was an incredible presentation. Your images are so powerful, and I loved all of the personal stories and connections that you had to each image. We have a lot of viewers in the chat box singing your praises. Julie Collins says, yes, love these photos. Bo Bremmel says, the photos are so intense, almost intimately close to these creatures. Looking birds and beasts in the eyes is startling. And I guess you have a little bit of a distance. You have your camera in between, so you're not directly looking at them, right? You have a little bit of barrier, so maybe that kind of helps with it. It does. And then Egrush says, brilliant expression of your gift of connection, Chrissy. So glad you're here on the planet, sharing and teaching Shine On, which is really, really awesome.
That's so
I
sweet.
know in the beginning of your presentation, you talked about kind of what sparked your love of nature and wildlife, but what sparked your love of photography?
That's a good question. I mean, I think as a kid, we didn't really have real cameras. So me and my sister would just play around with disposable cameras and pretend like we were models. I don't know. But then after that, I just was really into art and music and mostly actually into ceramics. That was my main everything. It actually is one of my first loves. And then I also love filming bands. And then there was a point where I was like, I really need to be able to take photos of my pottery, of my ceramics and stuff I'm creating. And then I didn't actually want to take photography because I felt like it was in my mind at that time, it was like an art for rich people, and I didn't think it was available to me. And then one day, after I'd taken every single art class at Santa Fe and there was like none left, I found a camera at a yard sale for $20 and got to take my first class there with Ray Hale, and he's absolutely amazing. And then it's just no turning back after being able to feel a camera, like click that button and going in a dark room. It was just the best feeling ever. And having a great teacher to start is also really good.
Yeah, getting that inspiration. So did you start with film and then transition into digital?
Yes, yeah, totally. It was, digital wasn't even available yet. It was like it might have been available, but not, it wasn't a main thing yet. It was early 2000s. So my first camera was a Canon AE1. It was, even the front of it had glass broken out. It was really a rough looking camera, but it worked for my class, and I was like, fell in love. It was so good. Yeah.
That's awesome. So was it the class that sparked your interest in taking your camera out into nature? Because I know initially you said it was about photographing your ceramic work, or what?
Yeah, that's funny.
Together.
That's a good question, because that's what I thought I was going to do. And then I guess, yeah, we just had different assignments, and it just, everything, like the whole world just opened up and looked great and exciting to me, I think. And at some point, how did it transition? I'm not really sure right this second how it shifted over time. I think part of it was working at the massage school, at the Florida School of Massage. And the school was located, there's only a fence separating it from the prairie. So it's like the Paynes Prairie is right there. And I ended up,
know if I'm the one.
Did I freeze? Or I think you're paused, but am I paused too?
You're fine, Chrissy. It's
okay.
Just paused.
Okay.
Oh, do we still have your audio page? Oh dear, poor thing. Well, Chrissy, I'm so amazed by your storytelling. Paige is calling me. Okay, here we go. Hi, Paige. You're on the speaker. You're actually now talking to Chrissy on my phone.
Hi.
It's okay. I will. I'll bring her out. I'll round it out. Thanks, Paige.
Sorry about that. Thank you.
No worries. Technology.
Yes.
I was going to say, I loved your stories. You were you shared your personal experiences, and then you shared your tips on, how fast you need to set your shutter speed, and the backgrounds of the moment that's in the photograph. It was so enriching. Thank you, Chrissy, for being so genuine and honest and so deeply committed to your I was going to say art, but I'll say arts, plural, because it sounds like you took all the classes at Santa Fe. And maybe as a last question, someone asked us to ask you, do you have a favorite animal to photograph?
I end up with a lot of alligators just because they're everywhere and they're so fascinating, but I don't know if I have a favorite. It might depend on the week. I do love the bison too, though. I don't know. So
shaggy bison. They're pretty sort of at one with themselves, it seems sometimes.
They're pretty incredible. I feel like sometimes seeing them is like seeing a unicorn. It takes so long sometimes. And some people say, like, I've been going for years and I never see them. But they just pop out every now and then. It's like,
Thank you. Actually, one more question is, where can we see your photography when we're not here at Museum Nights?
Yeah. So I have a website. It's chrissymartinez.com, and also an Instagram, which is Chrissy Martinez Photography. So either one of those places would be great. Cool. Yeah.
Well, I know you're going to get some more followers from tonight. Thank you so much for taking the time and the thought to share with us. Really appreciate it. I have just a couple of more student writing pieces to share with our audience. I'm going to
Nice.
say
So
good night to you here,
good
and you're welcome
night.
to stay on and watch.
All right.
Or good
See
night. I guess you're probably going off to photograph the moon soon.
It's tonight. This weekend will be it's a new moon, so we got like the perfect dark skies for stars. So if anybody's wanting stars, do I just click on leave and then I watch you on YouTube? Is that what we're doing here? Okay.
Yes.
Bye.
Thanks, Chrissy. Bye-bye.
Yeah. Oh.
Alrighty. So what an amazing evening. My mind's a little bit blown. You never know how it's going to be, but Hillary was fabulous. Chrissy was wonderful. And we have 2 more of our Words on Canvas students to share with you. So I'm going to just jump right into, one's a short poem. The other is a story that's a little longer and very, very beautiful and poignant. The first is by Amada Kakara. And let me go ahead and share my screen. Make sure I click the sound button.
Hello, my name is Amada Cashgrove, and I am reading a poem that I wrote for the Words on Canvas competition at the Harn Museum. This is Stoned Pulp. Shelf is the canvas for the uncontaminated form. Sever everything you take no pleasure in, only fundamental meat is left behind. A pin won't prick the stone logic, which no longer sways me into loving you or not, an impalpable cliche at any rate. Your finger may trace gleefully along the wicked snake, effortless grace of the ardent, stripped of the ineffable traits that once filed this flesh amongst the incarnate. No blood on the sheets, exposed and everyone a witness to the intimacies of this plain body. Hello.
Sorry. And finally, this is about a 4-minute story by Sophia de Leon. Again, written about a work of art in the Harn Museum of Art collection that she'll be in the frame next.
Hello, my name is Sophia de Leon. I'm an art and history major here at UF, and my submission for Words on Canvas is entitled Perfect Thing. How do you make a heart into a perfect thing? Delilah's head lolled forward into the nest of knitted black around her neck, her eyes peering up, willing the pale milky skies to finally turn stormy and rain. This was a day that deserved rain, if nothing else, not half-hearted overcast. Is it unbreakable? Maybe. A heart made of metal, of iron, molten with the heat of blood. Would it beat? Delilah didn't know. Would it break? No. She knew that without question. Even if it did, a heart like that could be pulled out and polished and tuned up as easily as a car, now couldn't it? An iron heart for iron blood. A hand touched her shoulder, gentle as drifting snow, as if it were afraid that with a stronger touch, Delilah might simply crumble, vanishing into the crisp March air like dust. Delilah was distantly aware that it was her mother. This was the part where she was supposed to stand. She forced her knees to rise and willed her feet to support her body. She began to walk. What would it be shaped like? Delilah thought long and hard, trailing behind her mother. She knew little about the mechanics of hearts outside of what they were not meant to look like, outside of what the doctors had delicately tried to describe to her. It all seemed too complex, too precise, too much margin for error. Round, she finally decided. They would be perfectly round, without any of the messy minutia. No misshapen chambers, no collapsed arteries, no valves that didn't quite close when they should. None of that. It would simply be a circle, perfect and simple. Delilah fiddled with the flower in her hand. Her aunt had wanted to use the shovel, had wanted them all to gather round and one by one do their part to blanket him in earth again. Delilah's mother had refused, though. She thought it too messy. And so each of them instead had been given a single stem of pristine white lily of the valleys to toss in when the time was right. She couldn't remember whose favorite they were. Is it still a heart, then? Delilah paused. Of course it was still a heart. If it pumps blood, it must be a heart. If it could have kept him alive, it must be a heart. Could a heart like that really have kept him alive? Delilah frowned. Veins, then. It shall have to have veins to carry the blood to and fro. As long as it could do that, it was a heart, was it not? As long as it could do that one thing, it would be perfect. Delilah stepped forward to the edge of the earth. Would it have been his heart still? Delilah paused, peering down into the breach of soil beneath her. A perfect rectangle, 6 feet deep, and yet Delilah felt that she could have been standing on the edge of a chasm, perhaps because she refused to look down to the bottom of it. Would it? It was the one question she had no answer to. She gripped the flower tighter still. Tiny lily-of-the-valley blooms crushed beneath her fingers like little porcelain bells. Her father's heart had been a joyful thing, malformed and off-tempo perhaps, but joyful and bright and alive. She pried her fingers off the flower and held it aloft over the coffin below. It had been feather-light, delicate to the slightest disturbance, fragile to even its own mechanisms, but unburdened, unweighted by fear or time. It had been a heart prepared to love for centuries, even if it would not see him through the spring. Delilah released the fragile little flower, half crushed in her iron grip, and watched it fall down into the earth below. The wind caught its stem, and it spiraled for a moment in the air. She peered down. She thought of her father's heart. She thought of the perfect creation in her head. How heavy a heart like that must be. Thank you.
Amada and Sophia, those are wonderful, wonderful ways to take inspiration from the works on view at the Harn. You can read, if you like, or listen to all of these and more, the Words on Canvas winners, if you go to harn.onsale.com. That's our mobile app. It's just a website-driven mobile app, so any web browser will get you there, and you can navigate to the Words on Canvas for 2021. It's really a lot of wonderful engagement with the artworks through different kinds of artistic approaches. So thank you for having joined us for Museum Nights tonight. It's been a lot of fun for me, and I hope you've enjoyed it as well. I want to thank Dulcie and Leah, who spoke about the exhibition, our Words on Canvas writers, William, Walker, Amada, and Sophia, our guests, Hillary and Chrissy, and of course, Paige, my colleague. So many people contributed tonight. I thought it was really fun. I hope you enjoyed it. I wanted to let you know that our next museum nights will be our last online museum night. It will be July 8th. Is it Arty Party or Summer Party? I'm not sure, but I wrote Summer Party here, Thursday, July 8th, 7 o'clock. But then in August, 6 o'clock, in person at the museum, free as always, August 8th, a Thursday. We're always the second Thursday of the month for museum nights. We're going to be in person again. We're going to see how it goes. We look forward to seeing you there. We will be featuring the brand new, not yet open now, but in July exhibition, Shadow to Substance, Black photography and Black experience in photography. Really amazing exhibition. Looking forward to seeing it installed. And you'll want to come visit us. The museum is open for you to visit in person, free, Tuesday through Sunday. That's 6 days a week. Free parking in the late afternoons, but also all day on the weekends. Otherwise, you'll want to ride a bike or a scooter or pay $4 for parking. Thanks so much for joining us for Museum Nights. A lot of fun. I look forward to seeing you at the museum, and I hope you're well and you enjoy a great weekend. It's been a baby Friday, as my son says, making tomorrow Friday, and then we'll cruise